Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started for our second U of M-Dearborn Conversations. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ken Kettenbiel. I'm the Vice Chancellor for External Relations here. And I believe everyone knows our Chancellor, Domenico Grasso.
Thank you.
So just for those of you who were not at the first one, Conversations event that we did in November, these are just forums for faculty and staff to get together with the Chancellor to talk about news and important initiatives that are happening on campus. And the Chancellor announced the strategic planning kickoff just prior to the holiday break in December. We had homework over those couple of weeks. There's a quiz later, so get your phones out, brush up on that paper. So we're going to just dive a little bit deeper into the paper and into the process, and we have some other important announcements to share today as how all faculty and staff are going to be able to engage in a very exciting process very shortly. So Domenico, first question. You're no stranger to strategic planning. You've been involved in a lot of processes and have led this process at other institutions. Can you talk a little bit about past experience? How was it rolled out? How did the campus engage? And I guess more importantly, what were the outcomes after your other institutions went through such a process?
Thanks, Ken. And first, I'd like to say thank you all for coming, especially on a cold day, just before you're going to be off for 2 days. So I really appreciate this. And please, this is very informal, so if you want more cookies or drinks, you can help yourself to that during the presentation and question and answer period. But as Ken has said, I've done strategic planning before. I've worked at different levels, both as part of the institution I was with and as a member of other strategic planning teams. So one of the ones that was most memorable, I was a panelist for a strategic planning effort at Princeton, where they were thinking very broadly about how they were going to organize in the coming decades. And they decided to identify certain very hot areas, nano, bio, and information technologies as the areas that they were going to focus on, and with some work in environmental. So that was, I liked how they were bringing in outside people to give them perspectives. So when I went to the University of Vermont, I led a strategic effort planning initiative in the College of Engineering when I was dean, and we identified areas that we were going to focus in, and we actually identified just one area was going to be complex systems, and we built a very strong effort in complex systems there. Then I moved to Vice President for Research, and the effort in engineering was so successful that the President asked me to lead a university-wide transdisciplinary research initiative there, and we identified other areas that we were going to focus on. Complex systems was one, health and nutrition was another, and now I can't, I'm starting to sound like the Secretary of Energy. I can't think of what the third one that I would cut is, but there was a third one there as well. And then when I was at the University of Delaware, we led a university-wide strategic planning effort. We brought in thought leaders, and that's what we're going to do here as well, bring in thought leaders. And I'm happy to say that the first thought leader that we're going to bring in is Mark Schlissel. He's agreed to come and share his views on where the future of higher education is. But having said that, I sent out a message earlier that tomorrow there's going to be a video conference with Larry Beckow, who is the president of Harvard, who is going to be giving his thoughts on the future of higher education as well at the School of Public Health. So I would encourage you to access that and watch that. But we're going to have other thought leaders that have been videotaped, and we're going to bring in some folks to share with us their thinking about where higher education is going, because we are at a very critical juncture in higher education right now.
So, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the thought leader sessions coming up in a bit, but just to go back on the strategic planning process at the other institutions, I would imagine by really focusing on new programs and things that were really unique to those institutions, it allowed you to channel resources appropriately, probably attracting very top-notch faculty, probably, I'm assuming, led to some donor funding opportunities. Can you just talk a little bit
Yep,
about
that was exactly it. We were able to attract faculty members from different disciplines to work on these strategic initiatives, and that allowed us to put together proposals that were cross-cutting, and we were able to attract donor funding and research agency funding, which was made those programs very successful. And one of the things that we were identifying that we're focusing on eventually at the University of Delaware was biopharmaceutical manufacturing, and I think that they received one of the NNMI grants that was about $60 million just recently for that.
Okay, just moving on to the vision paper that was sent to the campus just prior to the holidays, Confronting the Challenges of a New Era, a Call to Action. Mm-hmm. So I guess first audience question, how many people had an opportunity to read that white paper?
Everybody gets a raise.
And an extra cookie. So Domenico, what was the purpose of that paper?
Well, I think the purpose of the paper was to contextualize the strategic planning effort and to motivate it so that people understood what our principles were and what the challenges are as we go forward. Because higher education is going to be very challenged. Its place in society is being challenged, and even the value of going to college is being challenged now. So we really have to think about where the University of Michigan-Dearborn is going to fit in this national and international landscape.
So it really is I don't want to say a wake-up call, because I think a lot of universities, colleges are thinking like this, but I mean, we need to get in line, and things are clearly changing, and how do we get in front of them, and how do we stay, as great as we are? So if you read the paper, I mean, there were a lot of big terms. There were some things in there that maybe I know I was unaware of and hadn't heard before I read it. So I'm just going to have you talk a little bit about some of those topics. So smart cities was referred to in the document. Also talking about moving from the internet age, society 4.0, into society 5.0, which is one more of complex interconnected systems, the Internet of Things. What does all of that mean? And how is that important as we go through this process?
Well, to answer the first question, what does it mean? I don't know. So that's an easy answer to that. I think that is what is going to challenge the academy and our faculty and our students in the future. We are going to be interconnected. Artificial intelligence is going to play a bigger and bigger role in our lives, and how we decide to organize the principles that are going to drive artificial intelligence, the algorithms, is going to involve a lot of different disciplines that you would not normally think were part of the technology landscape. It's going to involve philosophers and economists and sociologists, because they are going to have to define the space that is going to be acceptable to us. And I think that this gives us a big opportunity to really rethink what we're doing at the University of Michigan at Dearborn, because this is a new way of looking at how we're going to do work, how we're going to do our lives. And I think that it's pretty well established now that nothing is going to be the same as it was. And the 20th century was a great century for technological advances, but this century is going to be totally different than the last century.
And probably will move a lot faster.
Move a lot faster, for sure.
So we have a multimedia presentation here today, so you probably noticed we have a few slides. So I'm going to go to the first one. We did a word cloud of the vision paper. So Domenico, I don't know if we're going to share notes here. We don't have a monitor, but the first one is a word cloud of the paper, and if you just wanted to comment about a few themes and a few thoughts that came out of that. We did that obviously after it was written.
So this is a fun thing that we did at the University of Delaware when I did the strategic planning effort there. We did a word cloud a week, because we would get comments every week, and then we would do a word cloud so we could see what the trends were of people submitting their comments. This is from the white paper, and you can see that university is the most prominent one, and that is what we're all about. We're all committed to the success of the university. And right behind university are the students. So it's very clear that we are a student-centered university. So you can put sentences together out of this. And that there are major opportunities ahead. And this is what we have to capture, is these opportunities. And as I've said before, doing this effort does not mean that we have to change anything. It means that we have to be intentional about what we're doing. So at the end of our process, if we end up exactly where we are, we did it intentionally, and we know that we considered other options, and this is the best way to go forward. But we want to look at our opportunities, tying in with the community. It's all about success, well-being, value, our education, Dearborn. All these things are very important to our future, and I think that this is a good place to start with the white paper.
One of the components of the white paper, you invited campus comments on it, and you shared that with some senior leaders, on your staff, and there were well over 100 people that have commented on the paper and provided some input. And so, just to summarize a few themes that I pulled out of it, I get the sense that the campus community, at least faculty and staff, are very excited about the process based on the comments that you received. There was a lot of inquiries about community engagement and a lot of suggestions about certain demographics of students that U of M-Dearborn should be reaching out to and have targeted strategies to them. So it was good stuff, things that I think people have said for many years. But there were also a few very big picture type of examples given. So we have another slide here. So this one is, we did a word cloud for all of the feedback that we received. Mm-hmm. And Domenico, there's obviously a big word. That should be the big word right in the middle of that.
Right. It's the same as very similar to what the white paper was. Students and university, community, the campus need. We took out the word raises because everybody wanted a raise, so we just took that one out. But other than that, students and university are clearly at the forefront of everybody's thinking on this, which is consistent with the white paper.
So people are getting in the right mindset,
yep,
clearly, as we go into this. So we pulled a couple of examples, and we'll put them up here, and Domenico's going to quickly read over some of these.
So this one, these are from people who submitted. There were faculty, staff, and students that submitted. I think the most important thing we can do is bend instructional time to create effective windows of time for students to reflect on ideas, return to them, and persist in long-term projects of inquiry and creativity. This is actually interesting because the Gallup organization did a study with Purdue, and it showed that for students that have long-term projects and time to reflect on their educational experience, they're much more successful in their careers long-term. So this is a great comment, which is consistent with what we're thinking as well.
And also very consistent with what the Talent Gateway works on with reflection, creativity, and problem solving. So that was nice to read.
Yep.
So one more quick one here.
Why do we need, this is not my suggestion, all right? Why do we need separate colleges of the liberal arts, engineering, business, and education, health, and human services? Why not create one single college that encompasses the best of all that we do and eliminate barriers and, in the process, a number of administrative positions, all with an eye on affordability? Well, clearly, affordability is very important. And I would say that this is one of the creative ways we should be thinking about organizing, perhaps without colleges. And there might be cost savings associated with that, but I'd like to think about what is the best way to serve our students and our community and our faculty as foremost in our thinking. And of course, cost savings is very important as well.
I don't know how I feel about eliminating administrative positions in there. Then the final idea that we just wanted to share.
Without adequate resources to build the right stimulating intellectual environment and taking high risks, it will be very difficult to compete with other universities to attract and retain talented faculty, which may have an impact on the quality of education. There's no question about this. We need resources. That is going to be a major part of the strategic planning effort. We have to find ways to attract more resources. And as I've said many times, We have to do it through philanthropy, through research. We have to look at net tuition revenue. And I don't think that we can look to the state for significant increases in funding, even though we are a state supported. There are all different versions of how to describe what our universities are now. We're in a state, we're state supported. There are, of course, as you know, the funding that is coming from states for all state universities is decreasing because of the pressures on the state. So we have to look at other opportunities.
A couple, just my reflections on the paper, and this one sort of hit home because there's a cool topping off ceremony at the new EOB, the final steel beam, the highest one went on. And my department's often involved with other departments across campus on securing capital outlay projects to fix buildings and build buildings. But one of the questions you posed in the paper, what structures will we build today if the university had no history, and why? And we tend not to think about what buildings should we put up just out of the blue. It's more like where's the need and what needs to be renovated. So that was interesting. And then I also take away some of the themes too were excellence and consequential activity. So I get the sense if we really can't do something great, then maybe we shouldn't do it. Or I don't know if you want to talk about consequential impact.
I might be a little less ambitious than say great, but I would say consequential. I think that whatever we decide to invest in should be consequential, that we don't do it gratuitously or ornamentally, that we have an outcome that we're trying to make a difference with. And great would be the best, right? But even if we move the needle a little bit, as long as we could say it was consequential, I think that that's what we want to do.
Okay, just moving on, as we mentioned that there's opportunities for campus engagement coming up. So we, today you wanted to announce there's a couple working groups that have been put together. At the previous meeting, there was a question about data. And somebody asked, how is data going to inform decisions and processes coming into play? So if you wanted to talk a little bit about these two working groups, there's another slide for you to read along as to what their charge is, what they're going to be working on, and we have a chair for this as well.
Well, the situational analysis is going to look at two major components. One is going to be our prior strategic plan, Vision 2020, and to look at what we've accomplished, what we haven't accomplished, what we should continue to try to accomplish, and maybe things that we decide not to continue in terms of accomplishing. And so do you want to?
Yep, and I think that's important. I mean, there was a lot of hard work, many years of work that went into the Vision 2020 strategy and the planning, and that document wasn't just put on a shelf. It's still living, and it's going to be revised, and we will look at this to take the next step forward in a couple of areas. So,
yep.
And then there's an environmental scan group as well.
Well, yeah, and there's an environmental scan group, which is going to do sort of, it's going to be tied together in terms of a SWOT type of analysis. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And strengths and weaknesses typically are internal, and opportunities and threats are typically external to the organization. So we've got individuals that, well, this is going to all be led under Becky Chadwick, you want to stand up so everybody sees you? Okay, so if you have data that you'd like to share with her, you're welcome to, but we've got two working groups. The Vision 2020 Review Group is up on the screen there, and you can see the individuals that have agreed to participate in this, which is great. It's a diverse working group. And then we also have the Environmental Scan Working Group, and is that up? Yep, and that's up there too. So we've got a lot of folks that have agreed to work on this. And this is going to provide all the data and really give us some insights into where we stand and what is out there that we're going to have to negotiate.
And that data will be used by the working groups we have some themes that we'll share in a bit to really inform their work. And I think this is a plug too. Becky and the teams, they may be coming to you asking for information. So one of the first things you all can do is when they ask, you can respond quickly, because we are, you'll see in a moment, the timeline is about a 12-month process, which it could have been a lot longer than that. And so everyone's working to condense what they can, and obviously, and everyone does a great job with that already, but if you do get a call from someone on the committee or Becky, just don't drop what you're doing, but certainly get to it quickly, and it would help everything move along smoothly. So that's your first assignment.
Mm-hmm.
So, so moving on, we want to talk a little bit more about campus engagement. So you had mentioned there's going to be some thought leaders coming to campus. So we have a slide for that too, as to how all of you are going to engage, at least in the first quarter of this year, as we prepare through the process. So Domenico, if you wanted to just reflect on some of those items.
Yep. So the first, of course, is short readings and videos. So we've got videos of other thought leaders. The one by Larry Bacow, who's a Pontiac native, by the way, so he's a Michigander originally. And before he was president of Tufts, he just became of Harvard. He was president of Tufts. He just became president last year. So he's relatively new, but he's been in higher education for quite some time. And before that, he was at MIT. So he's been in the Boston area at different schools, and I think he's got a great perspective. So I'd ask you to look at, watch his video and watch some of the other videos that we're going to be posting on the website, do some readings. The reading that is, and I've mentioned this a number of times, that is quite important is this book, Mindset, that I think really defines what this university is all about, because it's about where you end up in life really doesn't depend on where you start in life, as long as you're dedicated to continuing to grow throughout your life. And there's a growth mindset and a fixed mindset, and a lot of people that come from privilege end up in a fixed mindset because they think they've already made it. So that even before they get started, they're fixed in this, I've already made it, and they don't grow. And then they lose track of where they are, and somebody with a growth mindset can easily outpace them. And I think that our students here are the ones that have this opportunity to have a growth mindset. And this is how I'd like to really think about how we organize ourselves to really encourage that. So that's one of the readings. As I mentioned, we're going to try to bring in some thought leaders. President Schlissel is going to come very soon. I've got some others in mind that I hopefully will be able to bring in. We'll be doing online surveys. We're going to be having town hall meetings so that we can get together and talk about where we are and get more ideas. And we're going to have the website, which is going to be a repository for all this information. And hopefully we'll be having a lot of word clouds up there so you can see where the thinking is on and any other way that you can think of to engage. I would encourage you to do it, because I want to engage as many people as possible in this.
So just to clarify one thing, if you looked at Monday's reporter, there was information not only about today's session, which clearly you're all here, plus we did some emails, but the Harvard webinar that the chancellor is referring to was included in that article. So I think it's at 1 o'clock, noon tomorrow. We're all off, so we all have plans at noon, so we can watch it in the comfort of our warm homes. And the website is now up. It's umdearborn.edu/strategic planning, or you can just go click under the About Us area on the website, and then you'll see it on the right-hand side under the navigation. And as Domenico shared, there's a lot of resources there already. So the video version of the book Mindset is up there. Information about the webinar is there. All of these slides and all this information has been posted. So that is up, and that will continue to evolve. I mean, because I think you're getting the feeling the first quarter is going to be more about continuing to get into the mindset, listening to thought leaders, participating where we can, but the data group needs to pull together their information so they can start informing the second and third and fourth phases of the plan. So check out the website and continue to check it out. There'll be a lot of communication and reporter each Monday about this, and then of course emails from time to time. We don't want to overflood you with emails, so that's why we're opting for the reporter to do a lot of the communication. So I know a lot of you read it already. There's even added purpose now. So I do want to mention too, the focus so far has been faculty and staff, and very soon we will be talking about how students are going to be engaged in the process, alumni, and other community partners as well. So they haven't been forgotten. We're just they will be addressed very soon.
But I just want to make a comment. Make no mistake, we are not alone in trying to rethink who we are and where we're going. So this is still going to be highly competitive all the way through this process, and everybody else is coming up with clever ways of doing things. Penn, which is an Ivy League school, announced at the end of last year that they're going to launch online degrees, one of the first Ivy League school that's going to be doing online degrees. So everybody is coming up with interesting ways, new ways to deliver education and do research. And of course, there's Cornell Tech, which some of you know about. Cornell, along with the Technion, responded to an RFP that Michael Bloomberg put out in New York City, and they're building a technological entrepreneurial university on Roosevelt Island in the Hudson River. Hudson or East? East, thank you. East River. In the East River there, and they've already got 250 students, and they're really revolutionizing how they're doing education there as well.
So the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about the working groups and the themes that people will be charged with vetting out. So Domenico, I'll throw it back to you.
So this is our original thinking, and it's still evolving, but this is where we're going to start. Our first working group is going to be on the student experience and student success. As you saw from the word clouds, everybody's dedicated to students. This is going to be our primary focus, or one of our primary focuses, so we're going to have a very strong focus on the student experience and student success. The second is on our faculty, and to ensure that we have a strong scholar-teacher model here, that our faculty is supported in being top-ranked scholars in their disciplines, and that they are outstanding teachers in the classroom. And as Ken said at the very beginning, we're going to expect and accept nothing but excellence. So we expect them to be excellent scholars and excellent teachers. The third is staff development, that we want to support our staff in being the best professionals that they can be in all different disciplines, whether they're administrative staff, technical, or other types of professional staff. The fourth is maybe the most exciting, the most challenging, and the most creative. We're going to look at our resources, our structures, both physical and process structures, efficiencies, and management. Are we organized the best way that we can be? Do we need 4 colleges, for instance, right? Do we need a graduate school and undergraduate school? Do we need 120 credit hour classes? Do we need 3 credit 120-hour degrees? Do we need 3 credit classes? Do we need 14-week or 16-week semesters, whatever our semester length here is? So we're going to rethink everything there. And then finally is
and again, not to say we're going to change it, but
no,
at least
right.
to go through it,
we're going to
think about things.
Right. But there are schools that have changed a lot of things. And when I was meeting with the College of Engineering earlier, last week, I talked about a school that went to 7-week courses, and you take 3 courses at a time, 7 weeks each. So at the end of 14 weeks, you've had 6 courses, right? Which is more than the 5 courses that you would have in a 14-week semester. So you're only focusing on 3. So if you focus on less, then there's another model. When I was at Smith College, all their courses were 4 credit classes. And I know engineering here does 4 credit classes, but you end up graduating with 128 credits, but you're only taking 4 classes a semester, which again gives you more time to think. It also changes the workload for the faculty. So there are a lot of things to really think about. And then the final thing is the perception that we have in the general public, how we're engaging with the public, both locally, regionally, and nationally, and how the world views us and how we can change that. So those are the 5 working groups. And again, if you have ideas on this, or you want to suggest another working group or modify these, this is the time to do it while we're still in the formative stages.
Right. And I was, we'll be opening up the Q&A shortly, but is this still on? Yeah, it is. Think about that. Are these the right groups? Can they be modified? What's missing? You know, Are you excited to see those types of things? Domenico, as we were preparing for this too, you also talked about how these groups can maybe bleed together at some point as they continue to evolve. So they won't necessarily be siloed. There could be a lot of synergies across these different areas.
Absolutely. I can't imagine that the group on structures efficiencies would not necessarily have to interact with the faculty group and the student group as well.
And then
and let me just say, they will be staffed by faculty members, staff, and students. So we're going to have all of those representatives on, as well as community individuals that we're going to invite to be part of this as well.
The core values and performance principles, these were in the vision paper, so we just have these. We're not going to read through all of these, but as Domenico mentioned, these will help guide all of the working groups, and these are the key themes that all of the groups will keep in mind as they go through their planning. But it speaks to things about Michigan excellence and inclusion and other things that the campus does very well today, maybe can improve upon, but those will be guiding principles for all of the groups. I don't know if you wanted to add a little bit more to that.
I just want to say that as having been part of a lot of strategic planning efforts, I think a lot of people have trouble understanding what the elements of a strategic plan are. So I want to make it clear that these are our core principles. This is not necessarily our strategy. This is something that we do day to day and that we are committed to. It's everything that we do has our core principles involved in it. But in terms of differentiating strategy, these things don't differentiate us. To promote the success of our students, every university in the country promotes the success of its students. Or they should be, right? So, but I've seen in strategic plans that is the top principle, and that's their strategic plan, is to promote the success of their students. That's our core principle. These are things that are part of our DNA, and this is something that cuts across everything that we do. That's why we call these our core
So a little bit about timeline. And we've been talking about how the campus will engage in this process, and we have it broken out by quarter. It's not a surprise that the first quarter, there's more information than quarters 2, 3, and 4, because this is still evolving. But Domenico, if you wanted to share your thoughts about how you see people engaging, and I will preference this, there's going to be a lot of work coming up as we get into the summer months, and we'll work on plans on how to engage faculty, as many of them are not here as often in the summer, and just making sure that we're keeping this going through the summer. So just thoughts on timeline and
so we'll be pulling things together to start the launch in the first quarter. I would please ask you to volunteer for one of the working groups if you're interested, if you're really motivated to do it. It's going to be a lot of work, as Ken said, but we're going to be putting these groups together. So if you have an interest in one of the working groups, this is a good time to volunteer. You can also volunteer a friend. So if you know someone who would be great on this, then you can volunteer, and we will politely invite them. So don't be ashamed to volunteer yourself or volunteer a friend. The second quarter will really be when the rubber hits the road, and we're really going to be thinking about the strategic plan of the university. The first quarter will be pulling a lot of the situational analysis together that's going to inform the subsequent work. But the second quarter is going to be really where we're going to be seeing steam come out of people's ears, because there's going to be a lot of heavy thinking about where we're going to go. And
also, if I could, in the second quarter as well, the inauguration ceremony on the 12th. So that's a great opportunity to share the message and articulate where we're going, in the future with a very large influential audience. So we're looking at that as a really key moment during this process as well.
Yep, and I'm really, I'm hoping that we'll have enough information that we've gathered through the situational analysis, as well as some of the formative thinking in our groups, that I can make some comments during the inauguration. And I do know that through various connections that we've had here, that someone has invited the Japanese ambassador to come, the Japanese ambassador to the United States to come to the inauguration. We haven't heard if he's going to be attending, but Japan is very involved in this Society 5.0 initiative, so that would be an exciting thing to have him as a member of that. And then hopefully we'll work over the summer, and I know that a lot of people have summer plans, but I hope that this becomes part of your summer plan. And then
From the beach.
From the beach. And then in the fourth quarter, we celebrate. The whole fourth quarter, we celebrate.
So you promise us a big party at the end.
We will have a big, big party. Yeah.
Perfect. So Domenico, I understand that you've extended an invitation to a co-chair. I know you are very committed to this process, and she's here.
Okay.
So I'm watching. Big reveal. But talk a little bit about who you asked and why, and what your what your hope is.
Okay, so as we're launching this, each of those subgroups is going to have a chair, but I asked a faculty member to be the chair, a co-chair with me of the entire process, because it's important for the administration to be leading this process, because the resources and the future of the university is in large part the responsibility of the administration, but the faculty play such a major role in this that it was very important to have this co-led by a faculty member as well. So I invited Deborah Smith-Pollard, who is a faculty member in the humanities, to join me in this. She's agreed. She is super smart and can answer all of your questions. That's why I invited her. And she is going to help us think through the organization of this. She's going to join us up here. That's why this is coming up here.
Come on down, Deborah. And this is perfect timing too, because that was the end of our program. You couldn't have timed it any better. So welcome.
So Deborah is in the humanities, and I'm a STEM person, so we've got that covered. She has a lot of institutional experience and expertise, and I have none. So we've got that covered. I have an external view. She has a very strong internal view. She is held in high regard by her colleagues and by the administration. So I am very proud and very honored that she's agreed to join me in co-chairing this. So I will ask Deborah if she would like to say a few words before we open it up for questions.
Hello. I know you're surprised. I was surprised too. But once we started talking, and after I grilled him about who put my name in this hat, I realized that I did want to be a part of this team for a couple of reasons. As he says, I do have a long institutional history here, although I just thought I was kind of fading in the background, which was fine. But I looked at his background, and I saw how many places he had done some innovative things. I found out that he is an engineer who actually doesn't speak STEM, but he talks about art being a part of it, the whole STEAM thing as well. And the fact that he embraces the humanities is something that means a lot to me, because not only on this campus, but around the country, even in Ann Arbor, the arts and the humanities have been getting kicked in the teeth. So the fact that he wanted somebody who used that other part of the brain and could maybe comment on some of the directions he wanted to go to, I said, yes, I'm in. So I'm looking forward to it.
But you did keep me on pins and needles for a couple days, though.
I did. I had to think about it, and I realized that one of my best friends says, "What's in it for you?" I said, I don't see what's in it for me, but I can see what's in it for the people I represent in my department and the people who are invested in humanities. Can I just say a humanities thing for a minute? At the end of the day, when you had a hard day, you don't go home and say, how many computer programs can I run? You want to read some literature, you want to listen to some music, you want to see a play. That's what we do. So that's why I'm here. Okay. Mm-hmm.
I have a 14-year-old son at home, and he prefers to do the first thing you say. I'm trying to move him over to the other side.
Get him moving, get him on, get him moving.
I will. All right, so we're going to open up to Q&A. We have a couple of mics that will be roaming the room, Karen and I think Beth, and fire away. I also want to mention too, on the website we kept the area where you can submit a comment at any time. So if you're not comfortable standing up, all of that information goes directly to the Chancellor's office, and I can tell you every single comment has been read. So feel free to go that way if you prefer, and we're going to keep, that will be a feature on the website till the end of the process. So. First question.
I'm Claudia Walters. I'm a lecturer in social sciences. And I'm intrigued by the working groups that you have. You have one for students, one for faculty, one for staff. Now, when you described the one for faculty, you were talking about the scholars, the teacher-scholar model, but half of the instructors on this campus are lecturers. And I'm wondering if you've already thought of ways that lecturers might be included in this discussion.
Well, there are a lot of ways that lecturers can be included in terms of innovation in education, in pedagogy, right? So I see Ernest Boyer wrote a book called Scholarship Revisited, and he defined different types of scholarship. And there's a scholarship of discovery, which is the common form of scholarship that everybody thinks of, but there's a scholarship of education, of teaching, which is another form. And I'm hoping to work with the lecturers to come up with creative ways of delivering the material that they're delivering. And I would consider that as valid a form of scholarship as a scholarship of discovery or the other types of scholarship that Ernest Boyer did. So I'm hoping that we could work with the lecturers on the scholarship of teaching and education as part of their mission, and making this really a standout, which it already is, a standout institution for innovation at the educational level.
Blake Bonkowski, Office for Student Engagement. Same looking at the working groups. I was wondering if a diversity, equity, and inclusion specific working group would be something we might consider, or if there was a plan for how to intentionally ingrain equity and inclusion into the working groups that we have.
Well, this is where our core principles in the white paper come into play, because as one of our core values is equity, inclusion, inclusive excellence, and that has to pervade all of the work that we do. And as part of the charge, each of those groups should be considering that as a major part of what they're doing. There's been a lot of talk in the past about whether you should have a chief diversity officer on campus, because if you have a chief diversity officer, then that person's given the responsibility of ensuring diversity everywhere on campus, whereas if you don't have a chief diversity officer, the concept is that everybody's responsible for diversity, so diversity and inclusion. So I think that I would like to not have it as a separate working group, but have it as a part of each of the working groups and make it very clear that it has to be part of each working group's thinking.
Anything to add? Deborah, feel free to jump in.
I'm sorry, I'm hogging.
No.
The
Double dittos, okay? No, really, I think that's really important, not just separate it, but to include it in everything, yes.
Hello, Eva Gagola, Institutional Advancement. Can you tell us a little bit more about what what made you add staff development as a working group in the strategic plan? We generally have not seen those kinds of things in strategic plans, so what compelled you to add that as one of the separate working groups?
Well, staff are critical to the success of the university. There's no question about it. I think if we look at a balanced scorecard approach, we should all be committed to each other's success. But putting all of that aside, oftentimes students find staff members that are influential in their lives on campus. So the success of the staff is important to not just the operation of the university, but it's important to the success of the students. It's important to their own well-being and satisfaction on the job. So I think that when institutions have left it out, I think they've done it at their own peril, and they've missed a big opportunity to look at the entire organization. If you go to a corporation, you don't see the corporation's strategic plan identifying or eliminating certain groups. I mean, it's a strategic plan for the entire organization. But Ava, you're right. In universities, there is this focus on faculty or students or both, and then the staff are an afterthought, which I don't want to do here.
I know it's a priority for Staff Senate too. I know your message has definitely resonated, I think, with a lot of people across campus. Have to be a few more questions. It's either that or they all want the cookies.
Yep. Oh, there are two questions.
Come on, this is like our Friday, guys. We're off for 2 days. We should be lively.
I'm Matt Lornick, men's lacrosse assistant coach. I'm just wondering where you see athletics fitting in this plan of sort of rebranding potentially, or whatever it is that the strategic plan might lay out for us in the future.
I think athletics plays an important role on a lot of different levels, and I see Matt back there, and he's shared with me his thinking on athletics as well. But athletics is important for branding us. It's important as a community convener, convening faculty, students, staff around athletic events. It's important for the student athletes, because student athletes really get a lot out of their educational experience. They learn how to balance their time and effort, and really are outstanding members of the community for the most part, except for the occasional case that you hear that gets all the attention where something goes off the rails. But by and large, student athletes are tremendous components of the campus. And I think that I'd like to see how we can better utilize athletics on this campus to achieve our goals that we've identified in the initial white paper. But I think athletics is going to play a major role in this, and I look forward to working with Matt, the coaches, and the student athletes to think about where we can make some changes.
Sheila Smith, I'm a chemist. I don't want to draw attention away from the strategic planning, but we spent a long time on the Vision 2020 planning, and it's not even 2020, and here we are going at it again, and yay. But should we as faculty expect to sort of be in a holding pattern about the problems that we already, that need fixing now, in terms of, where to put students in classrooms, and low enrollment classes at the top is something that chemistry is really focused on right now. What are the kinds of moves that can be made faster than, and I do appreciate the very short time scale you've put up. So.
Well, in terms of student enrollments, we're in the process of hiring a vice provost for enrollment management who's hopefully going to put together a strategic enrollment management plan to hopefully attract the students that are going to fill all our classrooms, so we can be strategic about that. But I don't want to put things on hold. And I know that Vision 2020 actually was coming to a close. Is that correct? so that the planning part of it was coming to a close. But any good strategic plan is a living document, so you would expect it to change with time. So this is just transitioning from Vision 2020 to the next iteration of that. But I don't want to put critical things on hold for this. And if we have critical issues, I hope that they're brought up to your department chairs, to the dean, to the provost, and we're tackling those things as they come up. I don't want to put critical issues on hold in anticipation of a strategic plan. Because this plan, as much as I'm excited about it and I think it's going to be a great plan, it's not going to be a panacea. There's still going to be a lot of work that's going to have to go in to make it a reality.
There's one here first. Joy.
Actually, I have the mic for this time. Hi, everyone. I am Joy Beatty. I'm from the College of Business. This is more of a comment than a question, but it might sort of spur some ideas for you to respond to. This is the second meeting I'm at today for the campus. The first one was Pam Pennick's DDC meeting this morning, where we were talking about some of the challenges of the Dearborn Discovery Corps. And one of the things I noticed there, and I'm noticing here as well, is that a lot of our comments are coming from a place of kind of concern about resources and about competition. So for example, are you in the sciences or the humanities, and who gets more credit? Are you from faculty or staff? Who gets more credit? And I mean, we all have our own constituencies through which we see the campus and through which we advocate. So I guess I'm curious, I see that the committees you put together, the working groups, seem to be mindful of that, you know, we've got the faculty group and we've got the staff group, but I want to make sure that we also have a lot of space for cross-pollination and sort of interdisciplinary, like trying to break down some of those barriers. Barriers might be too strong a word, but some of that, hey, I want credit too. You know, those science people are getting all the credit. Those humanities people are getting all the credit. And I think one of the things that Paul Fossum brought up this morning, Paul, are you here? He's not here. He's probably teaching. Is that the budget model creates some challenges. The budget model has competition built right into it. So if you're from a group, maybe like you know, maybe Sheila's group that's not getting enough enrollment, or you're from one of the humanities, those people, you know, have some serious concerns. And if we don't find a way to deal with the budget model to try to become more collaborative, that's going to be a real challenge. Not exactly a question, but just some things I've noticed from the two meetings I was in today.
Joy, I think those are excellent comments. I'd like to just start with the budget model. The budget model should not drive priorities. Priorities should drive the budget model. So I think that we have to make sure, and I'm working with Jeff on this, on new versions of our budget model to make sure that our priorities are reflected in the budget model. I think that that's an excellent point. I also think that I personally am very much in favor of breaking down boundaries between disciplines, because those are really inhibitory to success. And when I was at the University of Vermont, the strategic initiative that we ran there was the Transdisciplinary Research Initiative, TRI, because we were looking at initiatives that were university-wide and were not going to be limited to a certain discipline. And I know I've got a super great group of deans that I see all four of them are here, and I think that they are very much of the same mind in this. So given the great deans that I have and a super provost, I think that we can start really making some headway on this in terms of making sure that we don't have these artificial barriers to this transdisciplinary work. But that's an excellent point. Yes.
Anything to add, Deborah, on that, or
Excuse.
just okay?
Okay.
Go for it.
There was a Tim.
Tim Wiley, Interim Director of Public Safety. One of the things when you talk about crossing lanes, I know safety is something that affects all of us within the university, and so we appreciate the ongoing dedication and commitment to the support that you have provided to us, as well as the vision moving forward. I know that we've already begun that with the Public Safety Network that's kind of bridged all three campuses, both Flint, Ann Arbor, and Dearborn. So that is something that's in progress right now, and it's showing tremendous strength. So we appreciate your support and commitment, and if there's any other thoughts as it relates to public safety measures in the future that you envision, but more on the community policing model, but we certainly look forward to being a part of the process as well.
Well, I do want to just say one thing, and this is taken for granted, and it should have been a core principle, but our number one indisputable priority is safety on this campus, is making sure that our faculty, students, staff are all safe on this campus. So that is our top priority on this campus.
Safe.
No, it says safe.
Yeah, we
Thank
have
you.
safe in there.
Okay, thank you. It's in there.
Just thought there'd be more edits that I would have to make after this. So thank you, Domenico.
Chancellor, thank you for all this. Aaron Kinzel, lecturer of criminology and criminal justice. I'm also a doctoral student and a graduate of Castle, so I got way too many titles connected to this university. I'm really interested in hearing about recruitment, like really structured, strategic recruitment strategies, particularly for people of color, not just students, faculty, and staff. And then connect that to community engagement. We're a part of Wayne County, which is dramatically impacted by poverty. The city of Detroit, we've been heavily impacted by mass incarceration, so we have a lot of students who have incarcerated parents, may have been incarcerated themselves. I'd like to see what are things that we can do for those community members.
That's an excellent question, and one of the things that I was very excited to talk with Deborah about is this is a priority of hers as well. She brought this up and she is from Detroit herself, and she was asking, why don't we have more people from Detroit, right? Why don't we have more students? And we are a very diverse campus by comparison to Ann Arbor for sure, and by comparison to other universities. But I don't think are as diverse as we could be or as we should be. So this is going to be part of the strategic enrollment management plan. When we get a vice provost, we're going to talk to that individual about this. And Deborah, would you like to say a few words about that?
And have no fear, we want students who are qualified to be here. Okay, we're not just grabbing them because they live in Detroit or just because they come in a brown or a black package, but there just should be more of them because we run into them sometimes. I was telling you, in summer school, sometimes students from Ann Arbor will come and take a class and they'll go, oh my God, you were so good. Like, yeah. So this whole idea of rebranding our image so people will know we're not second class to anybody. We do what we do well. You need to be here. And that includes getting into these, the Cass Techs, the Martin Luther King Juniors, the Renaissance high schools where 99% of their students go off to college. They need to be thinking about coming to see us.
We have time for a couple more questions.
My name's Craig Donahue. I'm another chemist. I wanted to, you mentioned the phrase cross-fertilization. I wanted to ask you about whether you have made any overtures to our neighbor, Henry Ford College. You're probably aware they have a new president, Russ Cavalluna, and I think part of the equation for us succeeding in the future is to bring them at some level into the conversation. They are training lots and lots of students at the freshman, sophomore level. We do as well, but we then continue with junior and senior and graduate students. I think it would be a shame if we undertook this enterprise and thought that we could come up with the best plan without engaging our immediate neighbor, and beyond that, some of the other community colleges in this area, but especially Henry Ford College. It's a 5-minute walk to their campus. I've advocated for about 40 years that we roll a red carpet between that campus and our campus. I never feel like we've quite stepped up to that challenge, but there's a lot of chance, especially because they have a new president, and I imagine he is trying to do the same thing with his constituency, that we ought to fold that into the conversation.
That's a great suggestion. I've actually met with Russ, and we started talking about ways that we can interact. His folks have met with Jeff and with Kate, and in addition, we stole one of his top people there in Becky, who was his IR person and is now our IR person, so we know all about their data as well. And I think that as she's developing our SWOT analysis, I hope that she's going to be looking at ways that we can better interact, not only with Henry Ford, but with the other community colleges in this area as well.
I would just comment that we didn't steal Becky, she just came back.
Good point. Good point. Yes.
I would advocate for a blue carpet, not a red one.
Oh, very good. Excellent point.
All right. Any one final question? Okay.
Hi, thank you. This is to Dr. Pollard-Smith. Sometimes everything old is new again, and you've been here a long time, and you've seen a lot of comings and goings, and I'm just curious if there are things that maybe got dropped along the way that you could see pulling forward into this process.
Oh. I dropped along the way. Give me a minute to think about that. I don't know about dropped along the way. I think we've already brought up the fact that this is in some ways a continuation of many of the research projects, if you'll call them that, from Vision 2020. And so if we can, I know that'll be a part of our discussion to, to kind of look through all of those materials that were created there and to make sure that important things, okay, so I can remember something I was a part of, which was about innovative teaching. But first thing I asked, like, who are we teaching, all right? And we really focus on that before we get innovative with them. Who are they? And I don't mean what is their background in terms of race or ethnicity, but how are they coming to us? How prepared are they? And how innovative can we be if we don't know where they actually are academically? So I want to make sure, because that was important to me, and I understand that was, I'm not saying that because my question was just all that deep and everything, but because that was something important. So now we have this dashboard that allows us to tap in and to find out that kind of information about our students. And I think it's helped many of us to realize everybody doesn't come in here, but everybody doesn't come down there. So how do we shape our classroom so that everybody is included to the extent that we can include them? So we will look at some of those, I think, materials that were gathered not only from that committee, but from the many other committees, and try to make sure that they don't get left on the table. Okay.
So I just have a couple follow-up items from the last conversations that we had. The Chancellor mentioned that he's going to be visiting various departments and colleges across campus. Those have started. Met with Tony's group on Friday. So he will be visiting your unit very soon. We also talked about office hours, and we have times held. We're just working on a easy way with technology for those to be scheduled. So the web team's working with the Chancellor's office to get those going in the month of February. So give us a couple more days on that. I hope it's days. And then, Domenico, you wanted to encourage us to wear Michigan apparel on Fridays.
Oh, yeah, that's right. There are two things that I wanted to mention. First is that I'd like to institute a casual Friday so that if you do wear a jacket and tie or a dress or a suit, that you don't have to unless you want to on Fridays. But the caveat is that if you don't, that you wear maize and blue. So you have to wear some school color on Dress Down Friday. The other thing is, this is something I borrowed from my time in Vermont, is that on messy days, like the last couple of days that we've had with snow and slush, that again, We don't necessarily have to dress in a jacket and tie. We can dress in what I would affectionately call Michigan casual, and you could dress appropriately for the weather, and unless you have a meeting that requires you to dress up with that.
So let's hope for a lot of snow. For the last So with that, thank you.
Well, let me just say one more thing.
Don't take it back.
No, I'm not going to take it back. I will let you thank everybody in a minute, but I do want to say that it's going to be super cold the next 2 days. I want everybody to be very, very careful. Make sure all of your skin is covered, and it doesn't take very long for frostbite to take hold. And in the aphorism of a Vermont saying, that there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothes. So please dress appropriately.
So with that, stay warm, help yourself to some cookies in the back. Thank you for coming, and we'll do another one of these later in the semester.
Thank you.
Thank you.